Are we living in a data-driven nightmare? That's a question that I've been asking myself for a while. It all started a few weeks ago. The year had just begun. And my friend Brad, he showed me an article in the American magazine, The Correspondent, which is basically talking about the fact that they think advertising might be the new dot-com bubble because the beliefs that the advertising industry, mostly Google and Facebook, are showing us is really completely up to them. And just like the old advertising gatekeepers 20, 30 years ago, now Facebook and Google, of course, they have a strong interest in making us believe that advertising on their channels really work. And this might lead to the fact that they only show us the kind of data that reinforces this belief. So this was kind of the first thing that I saw. Then the second thing was last week, Google Chrome announced that they would actually be ending third-party cookie tracking. And that means, especially for retargeting platforms like Criteo and some others, that might potentially be really bad news, just as much for any kind of full funnel, full user journey kind of tracking, multi-touch attribution type of tools, because they won't be getting their data as easily as before. That's part two of the problems we're seeing. Our current data-driven reality is going to change pretty soon, because if our cookies and pixels aren't going to be able to fire as much, it is going to be quite tough. And then finally, what actually was most shocking to myself was reading the article about, or a set of articles about the end of the very popular site College Humor. And the College Humor has been around for ages and it's kind of a beloved comedy site. And I found out they were actually really innovative. They had their first e-commerce for merchandise already in 2004. So they were always like kind of cutting edge. But then they've had a downfall in the past few years. And a big part of their downfall, of course, their audience is elsewhere, people's habits change. But they also made a big bet on Facebook native video. And they started that in 2015. And then a few years later, two things happened. First of all, Facebook, of course, keeps shifting its focus on other types of product, and they weren't focusing video as hard as they were promising to. The other thing is, it turns out that Facebook was in fact doctoring their numbers. So that's something that they have been accused of by several advertisers and content creators. And they've literally settled for $40 million US about this claim. And apparently they really doctored their numbers by something between 50 and 900, literally 900% more than the actual viewer numbers. They pretended the new viewer numbers were that much higher. That really shocked me reading this. First of all, I'm sad about College Humor shutting down, but more so, I'm also just very sad about the fact that these numbers that we as marketeers or content creators always believe are like the ultimate truth, and that's, for example, the view count of videos, or the amount of impressions we have on our ads, or maybe even the clicks that we get on our ads. These numbers that are always like our ultimate truth might not be accurate at all, because essentially it's just two massive organizations, Google and Facebook, who decide what we get to see, because they own the entire tracking and advertising market by now. And this has me really wondering about what we can do to escape this potential data-driven nightmare. How can we still optimize our campaigns with good data without making us basically a victim of these tracking platforms? I've been thinking of a few things. I've always been a fan of the last touch attribution through UTMs, but actually looking at the UTMs in my own logs of customers, whether it's buyers, email signups, whatever, because that still is part of the ultimate truth. And the other thing is that we're still, we have the opportunity to speak to our customers and actually do interviews about what they really saw, which ads they saw before they purchased our product. That's what I'm currently thinking, that of course, we're still going to need these platforms, Facebook, Google, and all of their tracking, because they are industry standard, whether we like it or not. But I think it's also important that we start thinking about what else can we use as sources for data tracking, and how can we make sure that what we're being fed by these large entities is actually correct, and how can we independently verify it. So I leave you with these open questions. If you have a solution for me, I would appreciate hearing about it. If you have thoughts, I would also appreciate hearing about it. Have a great week, and I look forward to dissecting more digital marketing topics with you soon.